Welcome back, all you toasters and moshers out there. This is Charles, and you're listening to Riffs and Spliffs. Hi, hello, and welcome back, as I said, to Riffs and Spliffs, your home for cannabis education and music appreciation. Now, I know I said in my intro episode that these forthcoming episodes would have a specific format, but before I went into that official format, I guess, if you will, I would like to take the time to speak out about two sections of the cannabis world that I think are very important and will help everybody out there understand a little bit more about what the plant actually has to offer and what's really involved and what makes up the, I guess you could say, DNA structure of the plant, if you will. So that being said, within this first episode, I would like to focus strictly on cannabinoids. If you're not familiar with what these cannabinoids are, essentially cannabinoids are occurring compounds that are found within the cannabis plant, and they are the things that interact with our endocannabinoid system, and that system is what takes in and absorbs these compounds and the THC, and essentially gives us the effects and some of the healing properties that we look for in cannabis. So there are roughly around 313 cannabinoids that scientists have found from doing research. The most common of those cannabinoids happens to be THC, which is also essentially just Delta 9. Whenever you hear Delta 9, that's just essentially straight THC in the plant. There's Delta 8, then you got THCA, CBD, CBN, which is cannabinol, and then you got CBG. Going first down my list in the most popular cannabinoids that are found in the plant, we got THC, and hopefully I'm about to pronounce this right without fucking it up. We got tetrahydrocannabinol, otherwise known as, like I said, that Delta 9 THC, which is the main psychoactive compound within the cannabis sativa, quote-unquote, plant. This psychoactive compound gives it its slight hallucinogenic / overall euphoric effects, or the quote-unquote high that you would get from the cannabis plant. And the way that this interacts with our bodily systems and our cannabinoid system, most importantly, is that the THC binds to our CB1 and CB2 receptors. Essentially, without going into a bunch of fancy medical terminology, mumbo-jumbo, they do what everything else transmitter-wise does in our body. These molecules get sent to these receptors, they take them in, they send it, the good feeling throughout all of our body and, all that good stuff. Next on the list, as I had said, is going to be Delta 8 THC. This is kind of one of those ones you'll see in tobacco or vape shops that also sell, the CBD strain flowers, kratom, Delta 9 THC, all that good stuff. Now, the way in which Delta 8 and Delta 9 THC are similar is that they both have a double carbon bond within their structure, but what makes them different in the slightest is that the placement of that carbon bond within the double bond. Be that as it may, and this is where the assigning of that Delta 8 and Delta 9 come in, the difference between the two is that with Delta 8, that double carbon bond is on that 8th carbon, whereas on Delta 9, it's within the 9th. And in the result, Delta 8 in a whole binds to the CB receptors a slightly bit different, and that's why you don't get such a potent high, quote-unquote, or any of those really psychedelic effects that you could get from the cannabis plant. So if we keep moshing on down through this list, our next cannabinoid that we are going to come to is going to be the THCA cannabinoid. Now, a lot of people, including myself, and I didn't get this cleared up early until I was doing research for this podcast, that THCA and THC in itself are very different. So THCA is the precursor, essentially, to THC. This is the compound found in the cannabis plant before decarboxylation, which essentially, if you think about it, that's, removing the carbon, and you do that obviously by smoking and inhaling the plant. With all that being said, THCA in itself is not intoxicating. So, when you're going to a dispensary, if you go to a dispensary to purchase your cannabis, and they label on there sometimes the cannabinoids and the THC content, it's not really the THCA that you want to be looking for. It's the THC in itself that you want to look at. But even then, which was also a little bit of a surprise as I learned more about cannabis myself over the past few years, it's really the terpenes that give you the effects at the end of the day and what you're really looking for within the cannabis plant, which is the next topic we'll be talking about within the next episode. This next one, as we jimmy jam our way down the list, is going to be good old CBD, cannabidiol. And I know a lot of people are a bit more familiar with this. A lot of vapes and, tobacco shops sell it, which I mentioned that a little bit earlier. So you can pretty much find CBD anywhere. It's very helpful. Gives you a lot of medical benefits. I don't know why I just said I kind of had a stroke. It could give you a lot of the medical benefits that cannabis in itself can, but without that, what could be anxiety, paranoia, depressive inducing high that the cannabis plant itself can give you because of the THC. So now if we delve into this CBD a little bit, CBD is going to be the second most active compound in the cannabis plant. Big among the medicinal side of cannabis, like I said. All the goodness and benefits of the cannabis plant, but without that psychoactive inducing horror that could occur depending on the strain you're smoking. A fun little fact, if anyone out there did not know this, but CBD, the compound's origins are actually derived from the hemp plant. So just like a lot of cannabis strains, CBD can help with treating things like anxiety, insomnia, chronic pain, and kind of on the bigger spectrum, they can help with seizures. Yeah. There is actually a medicine out now that's CBD based that is called, let me see if I can pronounce this right. I got it written in my notes. Epidiolex. Something like that. But yeah, so people who have seizures, they've been finding over the years that CBD has been very helpful. And there was a specific case of a young little girl named Charlotte who had all these really bad inducing seizures. I mean, I think after reading the story, they said she was at one point having a seizure almost, I think it was every 3 seconds of the day. And that might be wrong. Don't quote me. I can look it up and let you all know for later, future podcasts. But yeah, because of the battle this girl had, and the CBD ended up helping her so much. But at the time, even CBD was illegal, so her parents had to go through all this struggle, all this strain and hardship, and had to watch their little child. And being a father, I can't even imagine that. But ultimately, they were able to get their hands on it, do what they needed to do to get it, and they saw such improvement within their daughter. She went to having almost no seizures, if barely any, in a week. And unfortunately, though, that little girl did not get to live a very long or full life. But because of that immense battle and unfortunate ailment she had to struggle with, they came out of this with a CBD strain for her called Charlotte's Web. And now that is the most common / popular strain for people who are trying to use CBD to help with a lot of these benefits and, well, not benefits, but get the benefits that they need to help their ailments. But yeah, it's a powerful story. I recommend anybody who is interested in finding out more about history of cannabis or any of these things, go look it up. It's a very heartwarming story. But yeah, let's continue on and see what we got next in our bag of goodies. The next stop on our cannabinoid list is going to be CBN, and this is kind of a newer, from what I understand, a more newly researched cannabinoid. They're still kind of learning a lot about it. I see it sometimes in the strains that I pick up from my local dispensaries. So I figured it'd be a good inclusion to this little bit of educational podcast. So CBN is actually just considered a minor cannabinoid. The cannabinoid that is created as THC ages, like a fine wine or cheese, if you will. And like I said, research is limited on the uses of CBN. It's fairly new. Again, they're still kind of testing the waters. But it does have some benefits from what they can see. And some of those benefits are that it has antibacterial properties, which is really interesting. So hopefully we can do a lot with that as time goes on, because it'd be cool to be able to smoke some cannabis and get rid of whatever virus or shit you got going on. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be just fantastic? Some of the other things that it could potentially help with is it could help be an appetite. Come on now. Can you guys believe that? What a shame. Pressing forward, it can be an appetite stimulant. Can also help with glaucoma, and even could be a neuroprotectant, which again, that and the antibacterial property potential that would be very helpful and beneficial for the future of science and medicine. It's something I found interesting myself about CBN is that although this in itself as well is a non-toxic trait of the plant, it can potentially add to increasing the effects or the benefits of THC in itself. Because like I said a couple seconds ago, in the plant, the CBD is formed because the THC ages. So, for example, if you look on any bottle from a dispensary, it'll give you the date that it was harvested on, packed on, sell by, and honestly, an expiration, which I know when people hear expiration in cannabis, that just sounds kind of weird. But yeah, so essentially, if it were to go past that expiration date and go bad, you could still smoke it, and obviously you're going to still get, high or some benefits. They're not going to be as much, but depending on the CBD percentage or content within it, that could actually work to the benefit of you letting your cannabis expire or age, should we say. All right, moshers and toasters. Now that we've made it pretty much down the end of the list, we come to our last cannabinoid, and that is going to be CBG. What's CBG, you might ask? Well, I asked myself the same fucking thing when I was doing this research. I never heard of it, and now I'm starting to see this and some other random terpene that starts with an N that I can't remember because I've never heard of it. And, it's like you learn one thing about cannabis, and a second later you can look up more information, and there's like 5 more things that you didn't know was going on. And that's why I really like doing this, and this is why I thoroughly enjoy looking this up for you guys and sharing this information for you, because I sat there thinking, I'm sure a lot of people don't have time to do this, but do stuff as far as work, or downtime where they would rather just listen to a podcast that informs them of this shit. And bada bing, bada boom, here I am. And sorry if you probably just heard a scraping noise. That was my hand coming off my hip because I'm talking very intensely. I'm pointing my hand at the mic. You're welcome. Now that we got that little rant out of the way, CBG in itself is present in the cannabis plant in a low amount, generally less than 1%. Sometimes higher amounts can be found in younger versions of the cannabis plant. And although this is considered technically to be a minor cannabinoid, which this next part was very Tim and Eric.
Great job.
Mind-blowing to me, but especially for never hearing about CBG until I really looked up this information. But it is the mother of all cannabinoids. So by that, I mean that CBG is the cannabinoid that THC and CBD themselves are derived from. And you might be scratching your head right now wondering, hey, how's that even possible? So I'm going to tell you. Starting essentially as an acidic form, CBGA, hence why that A is there. As the plant grows, enzymes within the plant break down the CBG and synthesize it into THC and CBD that we've grown to love. Grown. One last thing to note about this cannabinoid, that just like CBN, they're both newer in the realm of research, but they're finding that CBG has potential medicinal benefits, and some of those can be helping with certain ailments from inflammatory bowel disease, even Huntington's disease, and honestly, even potentially fighting cancer cells. So, again, if this little tidbit of information doesn't convince you that there's some real good within this plant and potentially a quote-unquote miracle plant, I don't know what to tell you, because the info's all there and it's chugging away. And that's about going to wrap it up for this little ditty of a podcast, guys. I just wanted to teach y'all and give you a little bit more information about the parts of the plant that most people might not really think about when they smoke the plant, just because they don't really hear about it or see it listed anywhere, but they're there, and hopefully you guys got some takeaway from this. And even if you have some extra information or something on here that wasn't mentioned that you feel might be of importance, send it my way, and I would love to read any articles or any comments or anything that y'all have to say. At that rate, if you guys want to and feel so inclined to, you can check out the show notes for this episode down below, where, as always, I'll have links to all my social medias and where you can keep up with all the happenings of the Riffs and Spliffs podcast. And I look forward to hearing from y'all in the next podcast. But most importantly, stay toasty, friends.